Hey, what's up guys? This is Maverick here with another episode of Tower of God. So, last episode we concluded the test from Team A, which ended rather unexpectedly with the deliberate sabotage of Khun, whereas he did not allow his team to pass in favor of giving a chance to his homies, right? Which is Bam and others in Team B. Now, with that being said, this is not an either-or situation. Team B is still going to have to actually defeat the ranker to actually get points and whatnot. And, well, I don't really know if they can do it, right? Endorsi definitely seems to have something up her sleeves, so we left out a bit of a cliffhanger in the last episode. Well, I don't really know what to expect, so let's just get right into it and see what's up. Alright, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Story time? Ten families. This is an interesting art style here. Yay! Killed all of them. Really? How is this gonna help you though? Because she's a fisherman, so she wants to take out all the other fishermen. See, it would have been nice to know that 4 positions were available. But anyways. Why did she take Bam along though? Bam isn't a fisherman. I mean, another question I kind of have is, since all their movements are being observed, how can you, how can she be so sure that, turning against her allies is not something that will cost her points? Hmm. I mean, they're not exactly supposed to kill you. あ、left him. 'Like I said, then they already said that all their actions would be observed and they would be given points according to it or whatnot. Not to mention, like, what exactly is the criteria? Like, would they reward Bam for sticking up to one of their teammates? It's kind of ambiguous here. Mm-hmm. Yay? I'm also kind of curious, like, why Bam just chose to run after Rachel at that time. Oh, Khun already told him. Wait. Oh, could it have been Khun that actually sent the letter to Ho? Khun. Yeah, Khun probably sent that letter, I think. Or is it director? I don't know. Ooh. Oh. Oh, he just instinctively did that? And isn't that your job? How did you survive? Kill himself? What? Like that? And I gotta say, for an instructor, you're mighty useless here.
その方が面白いじゃない。私の合格は決まってるし。
それチョナの件よね。
なに、そっから説明しなきゃダメ？まあ大体あなたが考えてる通りよ。
なら裏切り者がのこのこ何しに来たの？
のこの試験は最後までやらなきゃダメでしょ、アホらしい。
あんたね。
冷静になって考えなさいよ、おばさん。ちんたらしてたらこの子死ぬわよ。これ以上犠牲者を増やしていいわ。
そこは安心しろ。すぐ俺が終わりにしてやるよ。
あ、待って、一つだけ。夜、正直私にはその女の何がいいのかさっぱりわからないけど、私にも一緒に塔を登りたいやつができたのよ。仲がいいとかじゃなくて、どっちかというと悪いんだけど、そいつを落としたくないから邪魔者は蹴り落とした。それしか私はやり方知らないから、あなたもさ、やりたいようにやりなさい。
That's a rather mature way of looking at things. Basically saying, I'm not asking you to like my methods, I'm not asking you to copy my methods. You do you, I'll be me. I like that.
気まずくなってるやつは嫌いだ。
ちゃんと目に焼き付けときなさい。私はザハードの姫。ゆくゆくは目を合わすことすらできなくなるでしょうから。
ゆくゆくは死ぬな。俺様は死刑。ここでは俺が神だ。
オーケー、始めましょう。
バッジは
ここよ。
はあ、ふざけた場所に。
見せびらかすもんじゃないわよ。
指導武器か。
本気で来ないと死ぬよ。
泣いても知らねえぞ、お姫様。な。
Ooh, nice.
あの技を習得したのか。すげえな。
これがあなたが選んだ答え？いいわ。ポイントは私がもらうわよ。
手加減なんてしてらんねえな。
そっちは神の水を制限されてんのよね。勝負あったわね。
あ、なめんな。秒で蹴りつけてやる。
世の中って不公平よね。私たちが奪われるときは知らんぷりして奪おうとした途端邪魔してきた。でも考えてみたら私こんな風に戦ったことなんかなかった。言い訳並べてばっかり。命がけで立ち向かったことなんか一度もない。いつも奪われてから後悔するの。
そろそろバッジをよこす時間が来たみたいよ。
行きやがってんぞ、お姫様。
今よ、やれ。
結果がどうあれ一度でも立ち向かってたらどうなってたのかな。
You have a chance right here, girl.
勝ち目のない人生だったかもしれないけど
Oh, here it is.
立ち向かってたら今みたいに心がポカンとすることない。
悪いな。
けど逃げた先にも道は続いてくのよ。命あってこそじゃない。
Don't normally people do this kind of monologue after the fact? Not well.
ったく罪な男だね。もう
何パンツ握りしめて夢みたいなこと語ってんの、ランカーおじさん。私のバッジはここ。
And your badge is in my hand. Nice.
チームの勝利。緑茶を改めて通達する。無口は
Oh, can Ho actually still be saved? Mm. Well, anyways, let's talk more after this. See you guys in a second. Alrighty, so there we go. We've concluded the test now with Team B winning. And well, I guess that also concludes this arc, right? Now, personally, I actually have some issues with how the development actually went this episode in regards to everything that happened, which we'll talk more in detail later. First of all, just on a personal level, I do want to point out that I identify with characters like Khun and Endorsi a lot more than Bam. Like, I know that people, it is a shonen after all, so it makes sense that Bam, this type of archetype, is the main character, you know, hopelessly naive and optimistic and power of friendship and all that. But and you know, it has a point, right? I'm just saying that personally I identify much more with Khun and Endorsi, who are more realist, more pragmatic about things, and thus don't expect me to show much sympathy, if you will, for characters like Ho or Serena here. You know, just putting that out there first. Not to mention, I really don't think that you can even describe them as treacherous, right? Because I think the thing that we have to understand is they simply know who their true allies are, and they're not going to betray their true allies. That's the point I'm trying to make here. I completely agree with what Endorsi said this episode. You know, it's not a case of her betraying her team. She was simply assigned to this team. It wasn't by her choice, right? So I fully stand behind that sort of standpoint. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the developments in this episode. And I think before we do that, we need to first lay down some things which I feel wasn't sufficiently discussed up to now for us to properly evaluate this story, right? And I'm talking about the differences in expectations of how characters should act, both from the anime viewpoint and from the manhwa, from the webtoon viewpoint, right? Now, obviously, thanks to you guys, a lot of people here have been commenting on the various tidbits of information that were left out from the webtoon, which further clarified a little bit onto how this test is actually supposed to be conducted and what they're actually evaluated against. But even then, I feel like there are some gaps in a hole that need to be filled in order to fully evaluate whether or not someone is making the right decision, right? Broadly speaking, I think there's 4 main points that we need to take note of here. And indeed, I do kind of wonder if the anime deliberately excluding some of this information is because they are trying to present an alternative viewpoint here, with the expectation that the characters are supposed to act without this kind of knowledge, let's say, or us as viewers are supposed to watch this without this sort of knowledge. So number 1 would be the point where the team winning this does not really mean that everyone on the team would pass, right? Even though the anime does not specifically state it, I believe numerous people have already mentioned that it's more a case of if you win, you might get a lot of points and whatnot, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you will pass. It could be possible that a person from a losing team actually earned more points, and so they are more eligible to get the spot or position in terms of their respective positions, right? So I think that's one thing that we need to clarify here, and we also need to know if the in-universe characters themselves know, right? Because that incentivizes different behavior, right? If it was a case where, hey, I could simply be a freeloader and I would simply just hide myself, and then as long as my whole team passes and I can earn a sizable portion of points and whatnot, that would guarantee me going forward, right? That would incentivize most people, especially the weaker ones, to really just sort of stay put and try to stay out of the way, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is the fact that there are only limited open spots for each position, which Endorsi has said here, with, for instance, the fisherman only having 4 out of 6 being able to pass and advance to the next stage, right? That is also something that wasn't particularly made clear in the anime so far. Well, they made it clear in this episode, and I think that also, you know, kind of explains some different ideas as well. Like, are all the characters in here supposed to know of that? And if they didn't know of that, I would actually expect this kind of backstabbing behavior to occur a lot more, even within Team A as well, instead of what we saw, a relatively peaceful conclusion beyond Kun's backstab there, right? So that is another sort of differences in expectations that should have been made clear first. The third point is something that the anime did mention, that they are graded on their actual performance. Now the thing here is the criteria is unknown, right? And I'm not sure if that's supposed to be deliberate, like they deliberately withhold the criteria from the characters as well, or is it a case where everybody should kind of know, but it's just not explicitly explained either in the webtoon or in the anime here, right? And what I'm talking about here is, so once again, this should act as a incentivization for people to act. Like for instance, do you reward teamwork? Do you actually reward more points for people who are able to work together within the confines of a team? Do they have to do things more related for their position, right? For instance, if a spear bearer is supposed to be specializing in long range combat, if they actually went up close and personal and attacked in melee combat, would that actually help their case, or would that have no bearing at all? Or for instance, if a fisherman was actually out there and thinking of plans and devising ideas to pass the test and whatnot. Well, as far as we know, I think the leaders, the commanders of the battlefield are supposed to be light barriers, right? So would that help the fisherman's case and earn that fisherman points for eventually getting a position here? Or is it a case, and beyond teamwork, is it really just a case of displaying individual abilities as well? For instance, in this case, with Endorsi taking on the other fisherman, does that actually give her bonus points because she showed that she can take on these other fishermen, or is she actually going to be deducted points because, well, you're not actually acting in the spirit of the team and yada yada yada, right? So I don't think that was made clear at all as well, and that also sort of changes the dynamic on how each of the characters should be acting, right? Because people, it's basic. It's basic economics. People are incentivized to do, if you show incentivization for people to do one thing, they are going to be more prone to doing that here. And unless of course they are stupid and don't really think through of this stuff, which could also be a possibility. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm just saying that it would be much easier to evaluate each of the characters if we know fully the information that they should know, they could know, or what information that they don't know, right? There is this sort of dynamic going along here where we as viewers, we have a sort of God view on in terms of things, right? But that's supposed. It could be a case where the anime or webtoon is deliberately withholding information from viewers as well. So that's the third thing. And then the fourth thing, and I also kind of feel like is kind of important, is this actually a test where people can actually die or not, right? Because I don't know. I feel like again, this goes back into some of the previous point that I've been mentioning as well, right? For instance, are you incentivized to run away from a battle, or are you incentivized to stand your ground and fight, right? And indeed, if it was a case where you don't really, like, you're not exactly in danger of dying because after all your opponent is an instructor. Sure, you might be bruised and whatnot, but I'm sure that if you really had the incentivization to show off your abilities and whatnot, wouldn't you actually naturally go more towards the standing up and fighting terms of things, even if it's completely helpless? You're going up against a enemy that's like way higher ranked than you and whatnot. You would still be incentivized to actually try, right? Especially if there's no real consequence to you. So that is also, I think, a point that should be taken into consideration. And these 4 points added together should allow us to understand whether or not they should be taking these behaviors. So, just for some examples of things where I feel like it's not really made clear, right? For instance, hats and the spear barriers. So, if for instance, this was a case where, even for instance, they are more incentivized to show off their abilities and whatnot, and they clearly know of this as well. Well, I don't really see a reason why the spear barriers would be running away instead of trying to see if they actually got an opportunity to use their abilities, right? Of course, I guess you could argue that they wanted to make their stand somewhere else, yada yada yada, but I'm not really sure if that makes a lot of sense, honestly. So yeah, and in fact, I would instead think it would make more logical sense, if the spear bearers themselves, because Hats is a scout, right? Hats is a scout. If he's going there and trying to at least sort of distract Quant for a while to allow a window of opportunity for the Spear Bearers. I think it would actually make more sense if the conflict here was between the two Spear Bearers themselves, right? Because they're both fighting for the same position. It could be a case where they both want to land the sort of defeating blow, the killing blow on Quan, right? And then so they are actually, even though not like maybe not completely in the open going up against each other, but actually doing some small things, some little things in the back here and there to try and gain the upper hand over each other, and basically a case where, you know, both want to land the killing blow, but both don't want the other to do it, and that's why they failed, right? I feel like that would make a much more logical outcome than what we see here, where they just simply run and don't really have anything to show for it, right? Because certainly I feel like them running would also count as point deduction for them, right? Especially if they do realize that they are being observed, which they should know because it was actually explicitly stated in the anime as well. I'm just saying. Or the point where, again, back to the scene where Endorsi was fighting against the other fisherman on her team, right? So, would she be incentivized to doing this? Like I said, would she be incentivized because she demonstrated that she has much better fighting abilities than the other fishermen, and so she would be rewarded that way? Or is it a case where she might be deducted points for doing backstabbing, for, you know, even if everybody has this idea that you're competing against each other, should they actually be incentivized to make it such an open conflict, is what I'm saying here. Indeed, I feel like, you know, what we've seen so far, I feel like in terms of the characters and how they describe the tower, and how it's really a winner-takes-all kind of situation, even then, you know, I would say that it would reward creative backstabbing much more than this sort of open conflict. Don't you guys think? So again, that's also something that I do kind of feel like they need to make clear first before the scene actually makes any sense to me at all. So there we go. Those are just some examples of things happening here, which, I don't know, might come into conflict with some things that we already know prior to this, but oh well. In terms of Ho and Serena, no. In Ho's case, first of all, I certainly wasn't expecting him to die, but honestly, Crimea River, I don't really care. Sorry, I just don't really care right now. Maybe I'll care more once we learn even more about his backstory, but simply just having a tragic backstory isn't really enough for me to sympathize much with him. I do think, however, even more interesting than his backstory and whatnot is how he got into this situation in the first place, right? My personal guess right now is actually that Khun is the one who sent the sort of letter stating Rachel's relation with Bam. He was the one who sent that letter to Ho, and you know, for some reason, right? Otherwise, how would Khun have known, right? He already knew back in episode 7, I believe, right? We can see him clearly glancing at Ho and whatnot. He knows that he's up to something, but how could he have known just by looking at someone's face, right? And indeed, how was he able to actually tell Quant, if he was the one that told Quant? But I personally feel like he was the one who told Quant. And, you know, again, this is just speculation right now, but I think it would kind of make sense for Khun to be the one who did this to Ho. And some theories I have are as follows, right? For one, maybe he thinks that Ho is too weak, and he simply wants to get rid of him, right? He maybe doesn't think that he is suitable for his close team of allies that Khun is trying to gather together, and so he just wants to get rid of him, and just end this problem once and for all, and then open up the position for someone else, right? That could be a possibility. The second one would be a very simple test of his loyalty. He wants to gather people who are, you know, he definitely wants people he can trust. He wants people that he can have confidence in, and it could just be a case where he was trying to test out Ho to see if he would be loyal to his friends, and in which case he certainly did not pass here, right? So that could also be a possibility. It could also be a case where Khun is simply testing the extent of Rachel's influence on Bam, and as we can clearly see here, the influence is very, very large. You can basically make Bam into a puppet as long as you have control of Rachel, right? So that could also be something that Khun wants to clear up here, to clarify here. So yeah, these three reasons, I feel like any of them are reason enough for Kun to do this kind of behavior. So for the time being, I'm gonna say that it was Kun who did it, right? Of course, don't spoil me, and we will probably know in the future anyways. But that's my guess for now. I could be completely wrong. I could turn out to be completely stupid. I'm just saying that I could totally see him doing it, and I can totally see reasons why he would want to do it. For Serena, really, the only thing I want to add here is what I mentioned in the episode already. I just find it kind of ironic that she was musing about her circumstances and whatnot, and her personality of not acting when she literally had the opportunity in front of her, right? And this again is tying back to to the fourth reason that I mentioned before, the fourth clarification that I wanted the anime to make more clear. Is this a test where people can actually die or not, or what exactly is the criteria for gaining points here? So, for instance, if this was just a non-lethal fight, right? I don't see any reason why she couldn't have at least tried to help Endorsi and try to help Bam. Sure, she might not be able to have any help at all. She might even make matters worse because she's just not good enough and get in the way. But still, if she was actually incentivized to do so by trying to show off her abilities and earn the most points as possible, I think it would make much more sense that she would actually be there trying to do something instead of just being there and sort of in the slums and talking about how she never acts when clearly she has the opportunity to do so, right? So again, that's just my 2 cents on the situation here. All right, so that was that, and hopefully this kind of made sense for you guys. You know, the reasons that I've stated, the things that I want clarified, and how it relates to all the character actions that I've seen so far, and some of which I'm not exactly too fond of. Beyond that, let's have a quick rundown of the current situation in regards to the characters we actually care about, right? And in terms of how likely they are to pass. So Bam, I think it goes without saying that showing his proficiency with Shinsu manipulation should allow him to pass guaranteed. Not to mention he is the main character after all. So Bam is okay. Khun, he's certainly already shown the sort of strategic mindset you should be as a commander and so on and so forth. And you know, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be confirmed as well. And of course, he is part of the main cast as well. So Khun passed. Rak, he's already passed. Endorsi, clearly we can see that she has already taken action to secure her position. Again, I don't feel like it's completely clear whether what she did was good or not, but at the end of the day, she did at least, I'm talking about her actions in taking out the other fishermen. But at the very least, she did show that she was able to get one up on Quant, so that just based on that fact alone, she should pass. Anak, hard to say, but I feel like she does indeed have the highest abilities out of the fishermen so far. And not to mention, again, if what Endorsi is saying is true and her actions are logical, then probably Anak will pass as well. Hats, as a scout, I'm not really sure he did things very scout-like, but he definitely does show quite the prowess in his individual fighting capabilities, right? So I think he is more on the safe side as of right now. So you know, that's Hat's situation. Lowry, whatever his name is called, the sleepy guy, I think it was already confirmed that he will pass as well. At least Khun has said so himself. So that's a go as well. Shibisu, hard to say honestly, but since Khun doesn't really take any specific interest in him, you could say, or he hasn't really specifically mentioned anything in regards to Shibisu, I'm going to assume that he's more on the safe side as of right now, but hard to say. Now, Serena, on the other hand, you know, that is where the uncertainty comes from, right? I don't really know how much points she's going to get just by participating and being on the winning side of this test. But I'd say she's about in the same position as Shibisu right now. And Ho, well, first of all, it's still a question whether he's still alive or not. I don't know. I feel like him being wheeled off kind of implies that he's going to be saved and so on and so forth. But well, I don't know. We shall see. But he's definitely also kind of in the same situation as Serena. It depends on how much they can get for just being on the winning side of the test. However, I feel like out of those 10, even beyond those 10, one other thing is that's one other person, who we should be thinking of is actually Rachel, and whether or not she is actually going to pass, right? She's probably in the same situation as Serena and Ho. Since she is on the winning team, I don't know if that's actually going to give her a free ticket to pass as well. And because she definitely didn't do anything particular in this episode either, except being taken as a hostage. So I feel like Rachel, Ho, Serena, they're kind of on the low side. Shibisu doesn't. At least in Team A's conflict, Shibisu actually tried to act as a decoy, right? So that should count as points for him. So the rest really just depends on the various criteria, the various points giving that I was mentioning before. Hard to say, but yeah, there we go. Oh damn, I've been talking for 20 minutes. That's a little bit too long. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this episode as well. Let me know your guys' thoughts, and if there is if the webtoon in particular made a better clarification about the entire situation, do let me know as well. In any case, hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.